Well, Gary, I hope this is not gloating. Did you see my tweet here from about 1:42? And I'm happy to say that I called this one, Gary. And I don't think maybe say I took a shot and got lucky. I guess that can be said. But Gary, by far the biggest win of the season. I don't think there's any question about it. How satisfying is it to see Iowa get a road win against one of the best teams in the Big Ten?
Oh, it's terrific. That's going to be a happy plane ride back. I tell you, that team hadn't lost at home. They came off a tough loss at home themselves to Michigan. That was a game they could have easily won that they didn't. They fell down early and fought their way back, so they beat a team that's tied for first. They got a chance to win the league and have every reason to play well. And I think the big thing was I think Iowa just outworked them. After the last 30 minutes, I think they just flat out worked them, and that was evidenced by the rebounds and the loose balls, and that's how you got to win on the road. Just a really, really, really good win.
And we got a lot to get to here. I know I'm so proud of Connor McCaffrey for knocking down that three, Gary. I'm sure you felt the same way because, of course, we know his struggles have been documented from behind the arc. He has that coming out party against Penn State. He hurts his arm and he's out a couple games. And to hit that shot, and that was really the nail in the coffin. How happy were you for Connor?
Yeah, he just keeps battling. I don't know how many times he got caught in the post on people, whether it was a switch or something, and he just battles. Really good passer. His toughness is they need it. And then when he can deliver a little bit of offense like he did on that shot, that's just extra gravy, so to speak. So really, really strong performance by him and needed. So that's what you expect out of your senior players.
And Gary, this is let's just call a spade a spade. This is a really bad start again, and I think that's maybe something that should be addressed, and maybe it's being addressed. It seems like Iowa gets off to slow starts, especially defensively. They gave up 21 points in I don't know how many 5-6 minutes, and after that, it seemed like that lineup with. Jordan was in it for a while, but Ulis and Toussaint really gave him good minutes. Connor gave him really good minutes. And then, of course, the Murray twins. That was really the stretch. And from then on, I mean, struggled a bit the first couple minutes of the second half, but it was a complete game.
Yeah. I thought the last 30 minutes, they really played solid. Even the baskets Ohio State got, they were earned. I mean, you're not gonna shut anybody out. Very few easy baskets. And that's what you try to do defensively. If a guy makes a great play and makes a tough shot, then hey, give him the credit. It's just the easy basket you want to try to eliminate. And after the first 10 minutes, they got very few easy baskets. And then for the most part, they cleaned up their misses with good rebounding. So real good team win at both ends of the court.
Absolutely. Let's get to our first call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's the real MVP. How you doing today?
Doing all right after that game, sir. A nationally televised win. Couldn't be better.
A big road win as well.
Absolutely. Quad one. And, I hate to jump to conclusions, and I know we'll talk about this later, and I know you call in from a different perspective as a Kentucky fan, but this is a win it's going to be hard to overcome in the negative direction, I guess you could say, because Iowa was already projected in. And, Gary, I know we got our caller on the line, but let's just get your thoughts up before we get to our caller. Your thoughts now on the tournament situation. I mean, this is as about a good a win as you can have to win at Ohio State. Theoretically, Iowa, of course, plays at Illinois, at Michigan. Those two losses, neither one of those two losses are going to hurt you from a resume standpoint. Right. I don't think the Michigan State game at home is probably going to hurt you, although you'd like to get that one. I think really the biggest games left are Northwestern at home and Nebraska on the road. Am I wrong?
You could be right. Yeah, I think there's a good chance of that. You never want to assume anything. That's why you just want to keep winning, and obviously, as you keep winning, you improve your seeding, and that's always good. So, I think Tuesday's game is really big. See if they can build off of this. Michigan State's has lost some games recently, so you know they're going to be ready. You know they're going to be physical, and that could really seal a deal if they could get that game on Tuesday, which is not going to be easy because Michigan State's, when they get beat, they're usually a tough task coming off a loss. So, but winning there against a team that hasn't lost a game at home that's in first place, that's a big win. They should feel real happy about that.
Well, Corey, let me ask you this. In my opinion, I saw a major effort level difference between this game versus Ohio State and when I saw a few nights ago against Michigan. Did you see that as well?
I mean, I certainly it shows up on the stat sheet. I mean, you see the number of rebounds. That is something we have not seen. And let's be honest. I mean, I don't know where they rank in the Big Ten. I've looked that up. That's a good rebounding team. I'd have to imagine, Gary, with Zed Key and EJ Liddell. And
Yeah,
Kyle,
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, Kyle Young's an excellent rebounder.
Yeah.
So for Iowa to compete as well as they did on the glass, I think shows. I mean, that's a lot of that's effort. We talked with Les Jepson about that the other night. I will say this: the reason why I was confident about this game, and you can say I was just throwing darts in the dark, if you will, but the reason I was confident about this is because I do think Iowa, after that Michigan home loss Thursday, probably felt a bit more of a sense of urgency. And I don't know if you saw that, Gary, but that's how I would answer your question, Drill MVP. I think there was a sense of urgency in how Iowa played today.
Well, it sure looked like it. I think the other thing is they attacked, especially on the offensive end. They just, they got him in the penalty early in the second half. They broke the defense down. That's where offensive rebounds can be had when you break defenses down. And they got a lot of shots around the rim. So I thought from an offensive standpoint, they were really sharp and aggressive and didn't settle. On a night where they really didn't shoot great from three, probably respectable at best, their ability to get to the rim and draw fouls was real important in their offensive output.
And my next question is the Mari Wheeler's fourth foul, the great Ohio State player on that three-point shot. How much do you think that impacted the outcome of the game on that call? And do you think that was the right call?
It impacted how the officials officiated the rest of the game, in my opinion, Gary. I can say that. And not in his favor. That was what I took away. A lot of touch fouls after that call, at least from my vantage point, just watching on television. You have something to add?
It was hard to see. It looked like to me he got him on the elbow.
I agree.
I didn't. You don't want to be that close. You don't even want to take that chance. So that with a desperation shot like that you see it all the time. You just don't want to foul the shooter. Period. And it looked to me like he got him on the elbow. Now it's hard to tell from a film, but that's what it looked like. And the way the shot came off, it looked like something might have happened. He doesn't usually miss shots that badly. So, but don't even take the risk. It's a dumb foul, and they fouled the shooter a lot. The earlier game today, the Michigan State Illinois game, there were a lot of fouls on shooters, which is just a really, really dumb play. So I thought it was a pretty good call, but just from a television vantage point.
Okay, and the final thing I'll ask about is Keegan Murray. I was really impressed with how he dominated the first half when Ohio State could have had a double-digit lead, but he decided he kind of took over. And in the second half, he recognized that since he was getting more attention on defense, he distributed to his teammates. Do you think he would have done that in the second half earlier on in the year?
Oh, that's a good question. He's been pretty unselfish most of the year. He's a very smart player. But I agree with you. His first half was unbelievable, and they needed every bucket to stay in the game. Especially getting down early, they could have really gotten out of hand. But he kept them within shooting distance, and they got it, close to tie or tied at half, and then they took over in the second half. So that's what you want your best player to do, is to play big in big stages, and he certainly did that.
And it was good to see. I'll just say this to end in the call, Drill MVP. This is the first game, and I know probably reality, if you look at the stat sheets, the box scores from weeks past, I'm sure that's not actually officially the first time. But when I watched this game tonight, Gary, it seemed like Chris and Keegan, this is the first time we've seen them really click together at the same time and kind of take over a game. And those were the two guys late. Chris on the boards, of course, Keegan the majority of the scoring, but Chris ended up with 8 boards, led the team in rebounds. It felt like those two guys really just locked heads and said, we're going to win this game.
Yeah, I agree. And they got some help from some other teammates. Yeah, I thought they were just locked in pretty much the whole game. And I think you almost say the same thing for the team. They just very few mistakes, very few turnovers offensively, very few defensive mistakes after maybe the first 10 minutes. Just a solid game, a solid execution, which you got to do on the road, especially as a good team like Iowa State.
All right, sir. Appreciate the call, and we always enjoy hearing from you.
Yeah, Corey, just make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Congrats, Iowa fans, for probably making the NCAA tournament, and congrats to Florida for humiliating Auburn today.
That's right, Florida. Appreciate it, sir. Have a great night.
You did the same.
Yeah, and Auburn falling again. Your boy Bruce
Kentucky
Pearl.
fans don't like Auburn, I guess, huh? Well, that's probably logical.
Hey, he was a big SEC homer, but do you see? I'm curious. Segue off of Iowa, but do you keep in touch with Bruce Pearl?
A little bit, yeah. Text back and forth a little bit. I mean, he's busy this time of year. I don't want to bug him too much, but he's got a real good team. They had a chance to win it. They had the ball with 7-8 seconds left. They didn't get a shot off and lost by 1. But when you're in their position, you got a target on your back, and that's a good league too. So they've had a phenomenal year, but I've taken a couple bumps of late.
And for the record, given how the seedings could work out, if Iowa stays in that 7-10 range, they could very possibly meet up with Auburn in the second round if they can get out of the first, because Auburn's likely to be a 1 or a 2 if as long as they don't totally collapse here. I know they were a high 2 in the initial seedings this morning. Let's get to our next call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, gentlemen.
How are you, sir? I know you're happy.
I'm having such a damn good Saturday. I can't stand myself.
There you go.
That's good to hear. We're in the same boat.
Corey, I compliment you on making the call. You understand a lot about athletics, because I think they were very frustrated losing to Michigan. And I think one of the things we don't talk a lot about is that on the defensive end, we're not the thickest team in the world. We're not the tallest team in the world. And we don't talk about Chris Murray on the defensive end, just going for rebounds, getting loose balls. The chemistry of this young team is coming. And I thought the key to the game was about 10 minutes left in the first half, going down to the end of the first half. And what transpired was, if you remember, Keegan went to the glass and just scored. And it was just a physical play. Then you had Patrick McCaffrey get bounced around twice. I thought he got fouled twice, ends up on the floor, slow to get up. And I think the whole team responded to some leadership on the floor. And of course, when Joe came in, that always helps. And I think maybe you guys know better than I did, but I thought he left Joe Toussaint on the floor more than usual. I think Coach sensed the physicality that we were ready to use today, and very complimentary on the TV call. Lavin complimented Fran about switching defense. I will listen to your comments.
Gary, I'll just say this and throw it to you. I get a little bit nervous. I texted you during the game. I get a little bit nervous when Iowa's actually doing well in the man-to-man, and then we throw in zone and just cringe. But it seemed to work okay. They played okay out of the zone. I will say, in response to the Toussaint comment, he did seem to see more minutes tonight than normal. But it was also a factor because Tony Perkins got an early foul trouble.
Right. Yeah, that's why you got to be ready, because that stuff will happen. People get foul trouble, they'll turn their ankle. You got to be ready to go. And he was. He definitely brought some spirit to the team. They I don't know how much defense they switched. They play 2-3 zone on out of bounds underneath, and so they're always going to do that. I don't know if they played any zone other than that. They might have played a possession or two. And in the beginning, they struggled. But that was a lot of those were during the first 10 minutes when they struggled with both defenses. After that, there weren't as many out of bounds plays. I don't think they played as much 2-3 zone. And their half court man was solid. And I think the other thing we talked about is that their ability to get to the rim and get them in the penalty early. Ohio State's a team that likes to block shots. But they can also get in foul trouble doing that. And that's what happened. They just love to block shots. That's why Block shots can be a fool's gold. They're great when they happen, but when they don't, you draw fouls. And I think it affected Liddell a little bit offensively when he got into a little bit of foul trouble. He wasn't quite as aggressive, and you want to pick up a cheap fourth foul and have to go to the bench. And but I think the bottom line is they got outworked. I think Iowa just outworked them. Loose balls, offensive rebounds, just more aggressive. I think they outworked them, and it was a quality win that they deserved.
Gentlemen, I got 15 made free throws from the free throw line, following up on your comment just now.
Yeah.
Result of physicality, is it not, Gary?
And taking it to the hoop. I'm guessing that was a thing they wanted to do, is they felt they could hurt them driving the ball, and they did, and got them, especially second half. They got them into the bonus really early in the second half. And that's such an advantage, because now they make a stupid foul, you're shooting rather than taking the ball out. And that can be really advantageous for your offense. And it was today.
I like your reaction to this. This team, I think, is having better chemistry. I thought they're very patient on offense, made the extra pass, and I like to know if you think I'm right or wrong. I really think the team, and maybe it's coaching of the rest of the team, the last two games is really making sure that they look for Keegan, and he's getting a nice proportion of shot attempts now, because he's such an unselfish player. And I thought that was pretty evident the last two games. But I'll hang up and listen to the rest of the show and listen to your comments.
Thanks
yeah,
so much.
I would agree with that. I think one of the things they do real well is everybody knows their role and what they're supposed to be doing, and appreciate that. And they know that Keegan's their best player, and he's got to get so many shots. So I think they do that real well. And I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit for that, communicating, hey, here's what we need you to do. And if you do that, we got a chance to win. And here's a good example. You beat a top 20 team, undefeated at home on their court. And that's a quality win. So I think this team characteristically all year long has really bounced back from getting knocked down, whether it's a loss or physically. And that's a good sign of toughness and coaching. And they'll be a tough out. There's no question they'll be a tough out. And hopefully we get a few more wins to guarantee that.
And Gary, you brought up the block shots. I couldn't help but reflect on your words from earlier in the season, because we've talked about block shots in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching this game, and I'm watching the crowd ooh and ah over every Zed Key and EJ Liddell block. But Gary, even I'm both ends. I'm not talking, I think Keegan had a block or two. It seemed like almost every time there was a block shot, it was recovered by the offensive team and put back up and in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your words kind of came true on almost all of those blocks.
It's a really, it sounds fun. And we wanted to become last in block shots. That was our goal, to be last. Not too often you have goals to be last, but one, we don't want shots around the basket where you're going to try to block shots. Two, you shouldn't try to block a shot out on the perimeter. You're just going to get fouls called, like the kid fouled the one guy late. And it can lead to, like you said, offensive rebounds. It can lead to foul trouble. There's times when it can be effective, but if you get a team or an individual player that's just shot block happy, you can really make them pay for it with strong moves and shot fakes and things like that can really, really hurt them from a defensive standpoint.
Let's give everybody an update. You're going to like this as well. Number 22, Iowa leading number 5, Indiana by 20 in the third quarter.
Wow. That's great.
So Iowa, boy, this could be a great day. I know it was alluded to that the baseball team, I believe softball won yesterday. It seems like when it rains, it pours and vice versa, and that's okay today.
Mm-hmm.
Circle Herc brings up Ulis. Boy, I thought he was really good in that first half, getting rebounds. Again, the guy doesn't shoot that much, and it'd be nice for him to develop a shot maybe during the offseason, but I thought he was tremendous. So your thoughts on him in the backcourt?
Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of energy, showed toughness getting over screens. He drew a couple fouls, offensive fouls on him, going over screens. If you go over screen soft, you're not going to get that call. You got to go over the screen with some physicality and make the official make a call. And I think he drew at least one, maybe two fouls doing that. And no, I agree. I think all the guards had their moments, which is good to see, and that's why they got to be ready. It's every game can be a little bit different, and when it's your turn to be called on, hopefully you can contribute. And literally everybody that had a chance to play, for the most part, did contribute in one way or another, and that's how you get big road wins.
Joe asks a question. He says, what is the best defensive lineup for Iowa? We may have seen it there in that first half, but your thoughts on that, Gary?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think it can vary. If you had to pick five, then you probably would pick the two Murrays, Connor, and then probably Ulis and Toussaint. Although I think Jabo has really worked hard and has improved his defense. The problem is it's not a game like football where your defense is out on the field and then they go off, your offense comes in. They're going up and down. So you can't just completely forget about your offense to have the best defensive lineup out there, throughout the game. Now, maybe coming down a stretch or something like that, you might, but you got to kind of balance that with, making sure you're taking care of it on the offensive end as well.
NFL and College Sports Talk says, do you think Iowa can get hot off of this? This is the right time to get hot, Gary, and it's a tough month of March before we head into the tournament with two road games at Michigan, at Illinois, two of the hotter teams in the Big Ten. But can Iowa ride some momentum back home, at least for Tuesday's game?
Well, that's 4 out of 5. Michigan State will be difficult. They got them at their place. They certainly had a chance to beat Michigan, and Michigan's playing well. Probably caught Michigan at the wrong time. I think so. It's like we've talked about, Corey, you just got to take them one at a time. You can't start thinking too far ahead. That's when you get knocked off. I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State, I don't know who Ohio State's got after Iowa, but they might have been looking ahead because it looked like it a little bit. It just, it's just psychologically, they lose at home to Michigan. We haven't lost at home here. This is ours. We got this game, and it just doesn't work that way. It's what drives coaches crazy. That's how you get outworked. And I think that had part of the reason why Iowa outworked them today. I don't know if Iowa State was as sharp as they had been in the past. It's hard to tell when you're not around practice and things like that. They may have had a great week of practice, but they certainly got outworked today, and that was a big reason why they got beat.
Ohio State gets Indiana in 2 days. So on Monday night, they get a desperate Indiana team that needs wins as well. So intriguing. They do get to stay in Columbus for that. Then they get Illinois on the road. So Ohio State playing obviously for seeding at this point. But this is just the Big Ten, Gary. I mean, teams are beating each other up in this league, and that's typical. But, I don't remember this much attrition at the top. You've got 3 teams now tied for first place with 4 losses. Rutgers and Ohio State now with 5. You got Michigan State and Michigan with 6 losses, Iowa at 7. The league is starting to sort itself out. There's no question about it. But, man, the top looks a bit more balanced than at least I anticipated.
Yeah, and Ohio State was playing for the championship. They're tied for first in the loss column. So that's a big loss. That may cost them the Big Ten championship right there. It's a big hit, that's for sure. It certainly reduces their margin of error, especially with some of the games they got coming forward. So Illinois' win today at Michigan State was huge for their Big Ten tournament aspirations because they were playing a team that needed a win. So that's going to hurt Ohio State. I think that drops them down to a point where they're on the outside looking in right now and have put themselves behind the 8 ball in terms of winning the Big Ten regular season championship.
Our call line is open, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. And let's give everybody an update here on Iowa and Indiana. The Hawkeyes, I'm talking women's hoops, Iowa leading 67-45, approaching the end of the third quarter. And what do you know? The leading scorer in this game is Monica Sinano with 18 points. So Iowa, not a one-trick pony. I know this is a men's basketball postgame, but the women are not a one-trick pony with Monica's presence down low.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Could be a real fun March if these teams keep playing the way they're playing and keep improving.
Absolutely. Pat, Joe T, unsung hero, great defense. I don't always do this where I declare a player on football, basketball, whatever sport we're talking about, my favorite player per se. And of course, as a coach, you'd never probably do that. But I tell you, Joe T seems to just kind of be the epitome of what it means to be a Hawkeye. I mean, he's had a lot of adversity. Some of it has been a result of out of control play at times in his career and just, turnovers. But he, I thought the benching of Joe T in favor of Tony Perkins and moving Jordan Bohannon was a bit unfair to him. But man, he has not let it affect him, at least on the court.
No.
See what's going on in practice. He is just a dog.
And that's a sign of a good character kid. You can be on the bench and moping, and that's not going to help your team, not going to help yourself. And obviously he didn't do that. And it was a good move. They needed something, I think, and they needed to see if they could get J-Bo off the snide a little bit, and it has helped them somewhat, and because they need him. They need all of them in whatever way, shape, or form, whether it's a great defensive play or getting on the floor for a loose ball or taking a charge or things like that. They just need everybody to contribute. And today they got that, and that's a big reason why they won.
Drill MVP says Rutgers looks like the best team over the past month. I do want to get your thoughts on Rutgers because they have been absolutely terrific, knocking off everybody in their path. And all of a sudden, that loss that Iowa had at Rutgers, that some people were looking at the time thinking that's not a great loss. Nobody's looking at it that way now. I mean, how good is Rutgers, and are they a tournament team despite those early season hiccups?
Well, I would think so. They've got a tough schedule left. I mean, they really have a brutal stretch. I think they've got 2 tough road games coming up, which includes Wisconsin. I guess that maybe they got Wisconsin. They already lost to Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin. But they got them at home, and they got 2 tough road games. So, but they've had a great stretch, probably the best stretch Rutgers has ever had. I know they had a Final Four team a long time ago, so maybe that team did. But certainly in the Big Ten, this has been the best run they've ever had. And their guard play has been terrific. The one kid, I can't think of his name right now, the white kid, he is really good. He is off of ball screens. He's been terrific. The senior guard's been there forever. Has been playing really well. And so their guard play has been really strong, and they're playing really good basketball now.
You think people are going to be? You think that showing tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. on FS1, Rutgers at Purdue? You think that might create some attention without NFL football for the first time? I mean, that's going to be a great mid-afternoon matchup.
Yeah. Now, the one kid might be hurt. Mulcahy, the guy brought up the Mulcahy kid. He's good. Thank you there, Hayden.
I think Harper's hurt.
Harper, and if Harper's out, then that's going to make him a different team. They need him in there because they don't have a ton of depth. But I think their surges have been their backcourt. I think their backcourt has really played well, and you need a good backcourt, especially when you play games on the road. I'll
tell you, Morier has been really good for them inside as well, though. Physical presence, not real. I mean, he's not. I don't think he's more than 6'9", maybe 6'10", but the guy is a physical player. And yeah, you pair him with what was already a very physical backcourt and a very experienced. It seems like Geo Baker and Harper have been there for like 7 years.
Yeah, no, Baker for sure. He definitely. They probably have.
Yeah, just about
everything. They have been there that long.
I know Gio, if it weren't for Jordan Bohannon, Gio would be the old man in the Big Ten. Lemansky, this is an interesting point. And again, I know you're going to say we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, but while it gets brought up, let's just mention it briefly. The Big Ten tournament has, it's been well documented that it's been a struggle for Fran McCaffery coach teams to win in that tournament. I believe Iowa's, and I don't quote me on this, but 7-14 or something like that in the Big Ten under Fran. Which means every other year they're bowing out in the first round. They've never won more than one game in the tournament. What have you found to be the key? You've coached in a lot of Big Ten tournaments. What have you found to be the key at winning in that tournament specifically?
Well, some of it obviously is seeding. If you don't have to play early in the week, that certainly helps because you're playing, one game after another, and so the longer you have, the more wins you got to get. That certainly is going to affect you. Depth is important because again, it's back to back to back, and I think you got to be playing well. You got to be playing well. You got to get some breaks. It's like the NCAA tournament. You want to be playing the best you possibly can. And if somebody plays a little bit better and knocks you out, then so be it. But it's a one and done deal. So it's a little bit different. And this year should be unbelievable. There's literally 10 teams, probably 11 teams that probably have a shot at winning it, which I don't think you've ever been able to say before. So it should be a lot of fun.
I know we've addressed this question before, Gary, but Martin says, does 10-10 still get Iowa in the tournament if they beat Nebraska and Northwestern, lose to Illinois, Michigan State, Michigan, and lose in game 1 of the Big Ten tournament? And I'm not a bracketologist, but my answer to this question is absolutely 100% they're in, as long as they don't lose to Nebraska, Northwestern. Am I wrong on that, Gary?
I would guess so. And I mean, if they lost ugly in the tournament, maybe, but I don't think so. I think 10-10, you feel pretty good about it. I'd like to get to 11-9. I would feel even better.
Yeah. And their net, and we've got to remember the analytics, the net loves Iowa for some reason.
And in some cases, it has to do with what happens in other tournaments. If you get some upsets there and all of a sudden some teams that weren't going to get in because they won a tournament, then that can throw a wrench into it too. So, when they do these seedings, it's all based on that stuff not happening. They don't expect some of these teams to get 2 in if they get an upset. So I'd say just keep winning. Let's get as many as we can get so that it makes the decision a lot easier.
Absolutely. Lemansky says, Gary, Badgers continue to get my respect more and more. Are they underrated? I don't think they're underrated because I have them rated fairly high. Your thoughts on Wisconsin? They've had a couple, the trip up to Rutgers. I still think that's a team that can win in March.
Yeah, no, they're playing very well. They're playing like Wisconsin plays. They don't beat themselves. If you're going to beat them, you got to play well and beat them. You're not going to get it handed to you. They're playing great defense. They're not turning the ball over. They don't foul. So they're in games. And then they've got a player that can take games over, and he's done that. He took the game over at Indiana. He took the game over at Purdue. He doesn't take those 2 games over, and they lose those 2 games, which could have easily happened at Indiana, at Purdue. And now they're not even in the race. So they're doing what they have to do. And their schedule is probably the most favorable one of any coming down a stretch. They do got to go to Rutgers, but they also got Nebraska and Minnesota, and they got Purdue at home. So I think they've got a real good chance of winning the league or at least tying for it, unless they stumble somewhere, which in this league could happen. Michigan could get them Sunday, tomorrow. That's a big game, but they've got it right in front of them, especially after getting that win in Indiana.
This is a bizarre stat. Now, again, I think I would have to attribute a big part of these net rankings to, because I know it's a factor, to margin of victory and margin of loss. And Iowa's played a lot of close losses and, of course, blown out a lot of teams. Some of those teams, we're talking early in the non-conference. But I'm looking at the net rankings, and you got Wisconsin at 20, Iowa at 21. Before this win hasn't been factored in yet. Is it possible Iowa could move ahead of Wisconsin in the net? And listen to these numbers, Gary. Wisconsin's 8-4 against quad 1 opponents, 4-1 against quad 2, 8-0 against quad 3 and 4. You look at Iowa; they're now 1-6 against quad 1, 5-2 against quad 2, and 12-0 against quad 3 and 4. If I'm not an Iowa fan, I'm looking at that thinking, how is Iowa even close to Wisconsin, let alone potentially jumping them come tomorrow?
Yeah, you got me. I think Wisconsin does have some close games against some bad teams. They had some games in non-conference they could have easily lost that they that they won, but won. They beat Illinois State by a couple. They beat some team from down south by one or two. They had some close wins, and they've had some close wins. They beat Minnesota by 2. They beat Penn State by not much. So they've had a lot of close wins that they've won. I think that's the only reason why it's as high as it is, because everything you say would lead you to believe it should be better than that.
Yeah, which just it seems to be placing more and more importance on style points, and not because of the eye test, just because of margin. So it's intriguing to see, and that's why I'm so confident, regardless if you think it's fair or not. I'm pretty confident right now in where Iowa stands, and I would believe that if Iowa had lost today on the road in a close one, I still think they would have been in had they beaten Northwestern and Nebraska and lost the other ones. However, I'm glad we don't have to experiment with that scenario. Yeah. So
we had a team at Iowa. We were like 19-11, and we played Indiana our last game of the year, and we didn't play real well, and we got beat. And that thing had put us at 19-11 or 20-11, and we thought we were in. I mean, it was just that was back before we had all these net rankings and all that. I think we might have a little bright time. We didn't make it. We didn't get in, and it was a real surprise. I think part of it was we didn't play very well in the last game, and that was kind of the last taste everybody had in their mouth. So ever since then, you just get as many wins as you can get. You just can't assume anything. But it looks good. But the more you win, the better it looks. So I think that's focusing on Michigan State, and that would be a huge win. It's not going to be easy. Michigan State will be ready to roll. It's going to be a brutal next couple of days for Michigan State players. They'll be ready to roll. So we're going to have to play well.
And not to stay on the net topic here, we do have a call to answer, but it does make me wonder with the net and if there are more. I haven't looked up and down the net enough to really say definitively, but if there are teams that make it in with a similar resume to Iowa with very few quad one wins and they get seeded decently high, my fear with that, Gary, is that potentially you could have scenarios years down the road where teams start to schedule just ridiculously soft non-conference schedules because they can run up the score and help their net ratings. Is that a concern of yours or potentially?
I don't think so. I think this day and age, you got to get a fair amount of the non-conference. They'll look at that. And if you're just not playing any kind of competition during that non-conference, that'll get you knocked out too, strength of schedule. So I think coaches usually they're real cognizant of what their strength of schedule is going to be like. Now that can change because you think a team's going to be pretty good and they're not. But that's where you got to balance your non-conference schedule based on the kind of team you got coming back, and to make it competitive. Not too daunting if you got a young team like what Iowa had this year, but get enough quality games in there that your strength of schedule is just not going to be horrible.
And I apologize to our caller there. Don't know if they hung up or got disconnected. Give us a call back, 515-635-1601. And I do see a comment here from Greg Christensen, and I could be wrong. He's bringing up Georgia Tech. And if my memory serves me correctly, did they not win the conference tournament last year? I know they made a run, if I'm not mistaken.
They might have.
But I don't know if they won the conference tournament, and I don't remember what their net – I really haven't paid as much attention to the net rankings as I probably should have and as I have this year. Question here from let's see here. Now I lost it. The Real Hayden says, what's coaches and Corey's thoughts on the matchup versus – OSU? They didn't have a true dominant center. The teams we've lost to, Kofi, Edey, Hara. I guess the only exception would be Wisconsin. Hara, I wouldn't consider to be a dominant center. He's a rebounding machine. He's not real big. I mean, he's physical. There's no question. We got bullied in that game. We also beat Penn State at home. That should be a concern moving forward. But, Gary, I think the growing trend across the national landscape is to play more small ball. I don't know how many dominant big men there are away from the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. Kentucky's got a rebounding guy down there that's good. Gonzaga's got the big kid from Minnesota. Auburn's big. in our league, we've got a few, and they're a handful, and that's why their teams are 1 and 2 with two best inside players along with Wisconsin. So it's a nice thing to have on your team, but if you don't, then you got to adjust. So it's challenging for sure.
I want to say this. There are a caller that keeps calling, hang up. If I put you on hold, you're not going to be able to hear the show. So if you think that I'm cutting you off, I'm not doing that. If I put you on hold, it's just so that there's not noise on the other end. So we do have another call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Pat.
No, it wasn't me that was calling. But anyway, I want to get both of your opinions to see if you agree or disagree with my assessment. And Coach Close has been around the game since Jesus was a baby. So
I'm not that old.
just like to get your opinions. I think that probably the most underrated player on the entire team for what he provides to the entire team is Connor McCaffrey. I know he's only a 20% 3-point shooter. I know he's been knocked around by fans, since he's been there because of his, inability to hit big shots. But, what he provides in leadership and mental toughness, and even what he provides when he's sitting the bench as a cheerleader, you can't buy that. And that guy is going to be missed next year. So anyway, that's all I got, guys. And you can, just wanted your opinion on it, and I'll let you move on and go Hawks.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate the call. And first of all, before you answer the question, Gary, I don't think it's a given Connor's gone next year. So he was taken off the baseball roster. I saw a tweet from Kyle Huseman just the other day, and I believe he's off the baseball roster, which would tell me that he's given up on his baseball career, which is unfortunate. But given the COVID year, I think he can come back next year, if I'm not mistaken, Gary. But you want to address the
yeah, I think the rule now is, and I'm not exactly sure, is I think if you come back now, you count against the 13 scholarships. Now he could come back and walk on, and I think Fran could afford that, but I think that's the only way. I think that's now a rule, so that people just don't keep doing it and racking up more kids on scholarship than 13 that are required. So I agree with Pat, and we've been kind of saying this all along. I think part of the heat he gets is the shooting a little bit. I think he gets a little heat because he's the coach's son. But you need players like that. Winning teams have players like that that don't necessarily score a lot of points, but they're smart. They make the right play. They're tough. And he's a solid defender. He's a good passer. And he competes. And you need guys like that. So it makes everybody else around him play harder, compete. And he's a real important part of the team. The more I've watched him, the more I've watched the team, the more you appreciate what he does. And if he can make some shots, it's almost like, hey, that's just extra. And there'll be some games where he won't play as much because they're going to need more offense out there, and he understands that, and he doesn't have a problem with it. But then there's going to be games like today that was a half court, for the most part, knock him down, drag it out game that was physical and competitive, and that's where they needed him, and he was really good today.
Let's take our next call here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey. Hey, Coach. It's Jared the actor.
Hey, Jared. Good to hear from you.
Hey, great win today. I'm from Madison. I think I mentioned that, but I was down in Dubuque watching the game and with some fellow Hawkeye fans, which was a lot of fun. And by far for me, the best win of the season. I don't know your thoughts on that, Corey, but I think, as far as what was their other best win they had? Was it Virginia or?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even in the same league. I mean, Virginia maybe on the road. I think that Utah State on the neutral was in there, but this isn't even close, Gary. And I can look at the net rankings, but this isn't even close. Am I wrong?
No, this is a great one. The team's in first place. They're playing at home. They haven't lost. They got everything to play for. you just put a hurting on them in terms of having a chance to win the Big Ten championship. And, you win a Big Ten championship, you got to take care of business at home. And they had up until this game. And that's a big loss for them and a huge win for Iowa for their NCAA hopes and coming off a tough loss. So everything looked like it was set up for Ohio State to win the game, but that's the beauty of basketball and beauty of competition. It didn't work out that way.
And Jared, just to put this in perspective, Virginia right now is 82nd in the net, so they would have to move up 7 spots. It's possible, but they would have to move up 7 spots for that Iowa win to be considered a quad 1 win because it was on the road. They'd have to be in the top 75. Then Utah State is right now ranked 64. They would need to move back in the top 50 because it was a neutral court. So this is by far, of course, Ohio State. I believe they're 17 in the net. Yeah, 17 in the net. And to win on the road, it would have been a quad 1 win, easy quad 1 win at home. But the fact they did it on the road, it's a lock to be a quad 1 win. They're not going to lose this one. So absolutely, it's the biggest win of the season so far.
Yeah, most definitely. Excuse me. Yeah, it was excellent. And also, I think Ohio State hadn't lost all year at home, so that was
right.
Even more special.
Yeah, that's something we haven't talked about. But Gary, we've
and they've beaten some teams up at home. I mean, they whipped Wisconsin at home. They've whipped some teams there that are good teams. So, and it's not like they didn't have a lot to play for. They're playing for first place. It was a huge game for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just want to call in and show some gratitude because I've been up and down about this team all year long. They've shown me moments where they've been quite tremendous, and other games where they kind of fall flat. So this is a special win today.
Absolutely.
Really well.
Appreciate the
Thanks
call.
for the call.
Absolutely. And I see this comment here. Drill MVP wants me to comment on Houston again. 4th in the net rankings. What are my thoughts? My thoughts are I don't understand the net. So do I believe Houston is the 4th best team? I absolutely don't. I don't think their resume qualifies themselves as a top 4 team. But again, it seems to me that margin of victory is a big part of this. And so I didn't even notice. I'm assuming, Gonzaga's first place, and that won't change. I mean, they'd have to really collapse because they're not only are they beating teams, Gary, they're dominating the West Coast Conference, and no other team in the country you can say is doing that. Even Houston, they've played a lot of close games and lost to some teams. Not the case with Gonzaga.
Yeah, no, they're very good. San Francisco and St. Mary's are decent teams there. If they got them at home, they might be able to put a scare in them, but probably not.
Yeah, Santa Clara is okay as well, but it just seems they're on a different level, and that's probably a 1 seed you don't want to be seated, in that second round against in the tourney.
Well, there's your example. That's why they go out and schedule a brutal non-conference schedule, because they know their league is not going to be as strong, and so for their strength of schedule, in addition to just getting seasoned, Coach Few goes out and schedules a brutal non-conference schedule, and he's probably smart doing that.
Just for the record, and I'm just pulling the scholarship numbers up here. If I'm correct on this, so Iowa, of course, will lose Austin Ash, who's on scholarship this year. We don't know what's going to happen with Keegan. You do bring in Josh Dix, and you bring in DeSante Bowen. But chances are, with transfers and the possibility of Keegan leaving, Phillip, we anticipate he'll be back. They'll likely have a scholarship open anyways. Now, we've talked about the portal and needing to go to the portal and grab somebody. So that's a factor as well. But, the whole, should Fran pay for his kids' education? That's been discussed over the past several years. I was just surprised when I saw that Connor was taken off the baseball roster. And the fact of the matter is, Connor has been, if you want to say it's unfair or not, there have been moments where Connor hasn't been able to hit the broadside of a barn, but these last few games, he's just really competing defensively. And we see him banging down low with guys like E.J. Liddell. You can't buy that. That's just invaluable for a team like this.
Yeah, it's contagious, no question.
All right, finishing up here, I see a comment here from Real Hayden. I feel like we get bullied when we play a true center. It severely hurts our rebounding, given we're 15-0 when we out-rebounded the other team. That was my thought process. again, I just don't think you're going to see as many big guys in the NCAA tournament. They played Grand Canyon last year and happened to face a big, a big man for the Antelope. But again, you're not going to see the big men of the country are right here in the Big Ten with Kofi and Edey and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, you saw Michigan State today. They couldn't guard him. And they tried everything. The kid's good. And sometimes you got to just give the opponent credit. They're good. You battle, and that's the beauty of this league. You're going to play some terrific teams and some terrific players. And same thing with Purdue. They've got two big guys in there that are real effective. So you got to fight and claw and scratch and try to find a way to get a win. And it makes the league real difficult every night out for the most part.
All right, this might be the comment of the day in this show, Gary. Greg asks you, he says, how does Iowa learn to play against zone with good athletic teams? Michigan, for example, because Gary, let's be honest, that Michigan defensive performance was not good, a lot different from today. And Michigan is a team Iowa's given up an average of 88 points per game over the past 4 matchups with the Wolverines. So that is a trend against Juwan Howard coached teams. How does Iowa solve that? Because they'll likely get athletic teams like they did last year against Oregon in the tournament.
So the question is, in terms of Iowa playing more zone?
Well, how does Iowa either learn to play more zone, and if you're not going to play zone, how do you adjust to teams that just overmatch you from an athletic standpoint?
Well, you just got to play good team defense. That's where you got to get people in the proper position to give you a little bit of help. You got to try to contain the ball as best you can. You got to try to squeeze the court, make the court smaller so there's not as much gaps and lanes to drive on. And then to do that, you got to contain the ball and you got to get people in good help position to, it's kind of like, it's a funny analogy that I've used before. When you're driving down a street and you see a police car go by with its lights on, what do? You
slam on your brakes.
Slam on your brakes. And so if you're an offensive player and you turn to look at the basket and you see nobody there, you're going to put the pedal to the metal and speed. But if you're playing Iowa, you see a lot of black jerseys. Oh, well, then maybe I'm not going to go in there because it's too crowded. And so that's the part of team defense that you got to have, that because you're going to get beat off a dribble every once in a while. That's just the way it is. Are there people behind you that can keep you from getting to the rim? And that's what I thought Iowa did a great job today. After about the first 8 or 10 minutes, they gave very few shots around the rim. You'll give up pull-up jump shots, 7-8 foot pull-up jump shots, and if they go in, they go in. You just stay. That's okay. You just can't give up layups, and you can't give up wide open threes. And you play teams like Purdue that can do both. It makes it tough on your defense. There's no question about it. And that's where you got to pay attention to scouting report. Where can you lay off of people a little bit more? Is this guy not a shooter? This guy's strictly a driver, things like that. That's where you got to pay attention to the scouting report and do a good job of that. But I was really encouraged today. Ohio State's a pretty good offensive team. And for the last 32 minutes, Iowa pretty much controlled it.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up this, finish this show off, Gary. So looking back early, I want to see exactly when Ohio State hit 21. So they had 21 in the first 7 minutes of this game.
And I charted that, Corey, and of those 21, because I wrote it down, they had 14 in the paint. They had 2 threes that were wide open, and I think both of the threes came off of out-of-bounds plays where they were in the 2-3 zone. And they gave up an and one for a free throw. So they literally did not give up a single 2-point jump shot. And they gave up 21 points. And I don't know what they ended up with points in the paint, but they had 14 of their first 21 were in the paint. And I'm guessing, and that was like in the first 8 minutes of the game. And then I'm guessing the last 32, that number was much, much better. And that's a big reason why. And they covered the 3 better. I don't know what Ohio State shot from 3, but it wasn't good. And so That's exactly what we're talking about. I think their shots around the rim dropped, and their three-point shooting. I'd love to go back. I think 2 of their threes were against zone after out of bounds plays. That's what we're talking about. The last 30, 32 minutes of defense was much better in that regard. And that's why they only scored 40 points in the last 30 minutes of the game. That's strong. That's a good defensive effort. And that's hopefully something they can build on. And they did a great job on Liddell. He was just okay. He got very few easy baskets. The ones he got were tough. And he's a good player. Those hey, nice job, and hope you miss the next one.
So again, I brought up earlier in the show just starting better. And so 21 points given up. And then we've said a lot of great things about Iowa. So we can be sort of critical here for a second. 21 points in the first 7 minutes. You talked about all the layups and threes, and of course the N1. 21 points given up against Michigan Thursday in the first 6 minutes of the game. So how do you get, that is a problem. It maybe didn't cost them today, but they got to figure out how to play defense early, Gary. And how do you make an adjustment when it's a certain point in the game that your team struggles during?
Well, I think one of the things you do is you point out in film, hey, here's what we're giving up and why we're giving up and how we're giving it up. And this is what we got to shore up. I think you got to continue to talk about it. Hey, it's a 50, 60, 70 possession game, depending upon who you're playing. If you're playing Wisconsin, it's going to be in the 50s. If you're playing Michigan State, it might be in the 70s. And every possession is big. And fortunately, the bad possessions early were followed up by really good possessions late, and it was good enough to get a win. But I think everybody's aware of it. They're just going to have to play better and understand. You're playing against good teams, so they're going to make some plays. It's not like you're going to be perfect, but you just try to get as close to perfect as you can. That's not easy to do, but boy, for the last 30 or 32 minutes, they were really good, and that's encouraging.
Joe says, in compliment to you, Joe, that's some solid analysis of the first 21 points by Coach Close. And Iowa cleaned things up today on the turnovers. And I don't have let me grab a final count here, Gary, because, of course, they struggled a bit in that category against Michigan.
Yeah, they only had 8 turnovers, and Ohio State had 14.
Yeah,
that was a difference. That's six extra possessions, and you throw in the offensive rebounds, you can see how you get beat. Just in that category there, turnovers and offensive rebounds. Ohio State could probably look at those 2 stats and say that's why they lost the game.
And Seth says he didn't get a chance to watch the game. Did the Bohannon foul and then technical foul give the game to Iowa? I don't think there was a technical. Was there, Gary? Did I miss one?
No, he probably should have gotten one, but
yeah.
No, I don't think there was. And like we said, I thought he got fouled. It's hard to tell on tape, but he missed that shot by a lot. So I think he got.
Well, he was trying to draw. Let's be honest. He was trying to draw the foul.
He should, yeah.
So the elbow maybe.
He's taking advantage of a dumb player. You don't get that close.
Yeah.
You just don't do it. Shot clock's winding down. He's twisting and turning and throwing up a 3. What are the chances of that thing going in? Don't even be close.
1 second on the clock. 1 second on the clock.
It's stupid. But you see, as a coach, and I can understand how you get upset, and maybe he didn't foul him, but let's assume he did. But it was, maybe a ticky-tack foul. The problem is that'll happen again. And so if you make an excuse, well, the referee just blew the call, well, that doesn't solve the problem of don't get that close to him and even take the chance. That's just dumb. And they made a lot of dumb plays. Now, if that had been the only one, then I might have given him a little more credit, but they fouled the shooter a lot. And that's just dumb basketball. And I guarantee they'll talk about it this week. You just can't give a team like Iowa that shoots free throws well bonus points. And it's the same thing with dumb fouls that are even not shooting fouls. It just gets teams closer to the penalty. And then when you have a legit foul, then it hurts you because now they're shooting rather than taking the ball out. So it's big. It's one of the reasons why Wisconsin's in first place is they just don't foul and they get fouled. And if you're going to beat them, that's one of the first things you got to do. Don't foul them, and and keep them off the foul line and see if you can draw some fouls on them.
And I just am still raving over this, Gary. So 8 turnovers on the road at a team that hadn't lost at home, and you out-rebound them on the road 40-31, and you win with just, well, they got 3 guys in double figures. Jordan ended up with 10. But Chris and Keegan, it was the Chris and Keegan show. I mean, that to me, you hit the nail on the head. After those first 7 minutes, Iowa won this game on the boards and on the defensive end. Did they not?
Effort. They outworked them. I think Coach Holtman would say the same thing. You go back and look at the tape, maybe you'll think a little bit different. But just my general impression watching the game, it looked like loose balls. Iowa got most of them. 20 offensive rebounds you can't give up 20 offensive rebounds, period. So those 2 things right there is a big reason why you lost, and it's effort. I think usually when a team is not ready, that's the first spot where you might see it, where the effort's just not there. And that's why I give the Iowa coach credit. I think even in the losses, their effort has been really good all year long. That's good coaching. They've been competitive. They've been in games. I would be curious. Maybe we can find out in a paper or something how Coach Holtman, analyzed the effort of his team today. But you give up 20 rebounds on the glass. I mean, that's just unacceptable. Period.
It's a not very good rebounding team. Iowa's not a great rebounding team.
Right. At least not an overwhelming rebounding team. It just looked to me like when there was a loose ball, and really a rebound is a loose ball. That's what it is. It's a loose ball. It's just higher in the air than one on the ground. And the teams that goes and gets those loose balls usually wins. It's crazy, but it usually happens that way. And I think if we charted loose balls on the ground, I think Iowa got most of them, and they certainly got the ones in the air to a tune of 20 offensive rebounds. That's a lot. How many shots did they miss?
How many shots did who miss?
Iowa miss.
Let's give you the exact number here. Iowa was 6 of 21 from 3, 15 of 21 from the free throw line, and 27 of 64 from the field.
So 27 of 64 includes the threes. So they missed 34 shots, right?
21 of 43 from 2.
How many shots did Ohio State miss? What was their field goal percentage?
They were 2 of 11 from 3, 23 of 49 from 2. So they shot 47% from the field. So they were, what was that?
So they missed 35 shots?
21 of 38 from 2.
Well, what were they total from the field?
23 of 49.
So they missed 26 shots.
26 shots. Yeah.
And they might have missed a few free throws that weren't the first of 2 shots.
Yeah.
Follow me? And Iowa got 20 of them. Or excuse me, how many shots did Iowa miss? Iowa
missed 37.
37 shots. And they might have missed a couple of free throws. So they literally got half of the shots.
Right.
Half or more of the shots they missed, they got. And that's way too high. And that's a big reason why they won the game. And how many times they get offensive rebounds, they got fouled.
Yeah.
Now you're in the penalty sooner. So that all contributes to getting beat.
And some of those offensive rebounds, Gary, I go back to shot blocks, right? Those are considered offensive rebounds. A guy blocks a shot, and it ends up in Keegan Murray's hand, and he dunks it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's equivalent to it. I mean, if you go up straight, I'm not saying that shot blocks are bad, but you've talked about that. It can actually create, you got a guy in the air and then nobody defending the rim at that point. And Ohio State got in some trouble doing that. And I'm impressed by, I tweeted this out before the game started, how key I thought it was for Keegan to stay out of foul trouble, because they needed him. I just had a feeling they would really need his length today. And boy, he did. He's not as, he got called for a cheap one early against Michigan Thursday. And I think that probably makes these guys play timid because you're afraid of getting that second. If you get a foul called on you in the first 3 minutes, you're going to sit out the rest of the half if you get one called on you in a couple of minutes. So he's doing a good job not being baited into unnecessary shot block attempts and reaching in and just another complete performance from Keegan. And I stand by what we said on Thursday. Right now he's playing like a lottery pick. And, they didn't get a whole lot of offensive production from anybody else besides Keegan. I mean, like I said, Chris Murray was the second highest scorer with 11 and Jordan with 10.
Yeah, they got some timely baskets from everybody else. Like you talk about Connor's three, and Jordan had a couple threes that were big, and those all help. And then your best player just shined, and that's what you need to get a really, really impressive win. So had to be a happy plane ride home, that's for sure.
All right, to recap for everybody, Iowa defeating Ohio State 75-62 on the road, a guaranteed quad one win for Iowa. That's for certain. We'll see what happens to the net tomorrow. Of course, they get Michigan State Tuesday, but Keegan Murray with 24 points, 10 of 17 from the field tonight with 5 boards. Chris Murray with 11 points and 8 really big rebounds. And Iowa just, in addition to the rebounds, Gary, it seemed like Iowa was doing a lot better with 50-50 balls, which seems to be a struggle with this team. And boy, you even saw Jordan diving at loose balls, and it just seemed like that effort was a sense of urgency. I keep using that word.
And it's contagious. There's no question it's contagious. And let's face it, they're not good enough not to have to do that. And most teams aren't. You're just not going to beat teams because you're just so much more talented than everybody else. Especially in this league, you got to outwork people, and it's not easy to do. And in some cases, you might outwork them and not win. But usually, when you get outworked, unless you get some luck, you usually don't win. And that's where you got to compete and hang in there. And I thought today they were the aggressor, and they outworked Ohio State on most of the possessions. And I think it's a big reason why they won.
All right, folks. Iowa, Michigan State Tuesday. No post-game show Tuesday. I've got an engagement Tuesday night. So
you're kidding me.
You're getting it up, Gary. We can have you on here by yourself.
Right when our ratings are soaring.
I'll tell you what, Gary. We'll put you on the show by yourself, and you can take Darrell MVP's calls about Auburn and Houston and Kentucky.
Actually, I'm hoping to be there myself. I'm hoping to get down into that game. So we'll have to regroup whenever the next one is.
Yeah, let me just take a peek at the schedule. And again, you see the game scheduled for, what do I have Saturday? Let me correct that. Of course, the game's Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN for the Hawks and the Spartans. But let me just pull up so everybody can, I know they play Nebraska after that, and I will actually be at that game, I believe. So, but we should be able to do our post-game show that night. Let me pull up the schedule. So, Michigan State Tuesday, at Nebraska, which that following Friday, which may be the biggest game left on the schedule. I mean, in a weird way, because you lose, I don't care if you're on the road or at home, to a Nebraska team that is just struggling. I don't know how you I have a hard time seeing Hoiberg being brought back another year, Gary. I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts on Hoiberg, but
yeah, I think I'll keep that to myself.
I'll say it. I'm not feeling good about it. I like Fred. He's the mayor.
I do too. We competed against him. He was an unbelievable player. I mean, he should have wore black and gold. He would have been even better. But he was a terrific player. I called him when I found out his dad was a professor at Iowa State. I said, boy, I don't know if my chances are going to be real good here. So he had a terrific career there. He's a really, really good person. You feel for him because, man, it's got to be tough because they are really struggling. But let's hope they struggle past the Iowa game.
And, Gary, we oohed and awed over Iowa State early, and they're having a heck of a time. Boy, they got a much-needed last-second victory against TCU on the road on Tuesday night.
They won big today. They won big again today.
They win big today? Okay.
They beat Oklahoma soundly today. So
they
they're
needed
kind of
it.
the same way. When they get knocked down, they get back up again, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, they needed it because right now, according to most pundits, they are closer to the bubble than Iowa. Let that sink in for a second.
Well, the league's not as strong, at least not as deep as Big Ten is deep this year. I mean, there's 2 bad teams, and beyond that, anybody can beat you. It's scary.
All right. So again, Iowa, Michigan State Tuesday, Nebraska on the road Friday, Northwestern at home on the 28th. And then, of course, they finish the season, Iowa does, at Michigan on March 3rd, at Illinois March 6th. You almost wish, at least I almost wish, that you didn't have to finish on the road with 2 straight. But they're going to be away from home, hopefully for a while once they get to March. So an opportunity for Iowa to get some momentum. You mentioned 4 of 5 now. Am I correct in saying 4 of 5?
Yeah, and they got 2 games left, so hopefully the fans will come out these next 2 games because this is it. It's last 2 games you're going to see Keegan at Carver. I can almost guarantee it, and 2 games that they need. So let's hope the place is packed.
Feels like you just got here, Gary.
Corey, I think you should get over there and see these next 2 games. No excuses.
I am weighing for certain. Tuesday won't work, but that Northwestern game, the good news about the Northwestern game for anybody that missed that, so that was initially scheduled for a Monday night at 8, which is like the worst time, I think, for a basketball game. It was slid up, so it's a 7 p.m. game now.
And it's senior night.
It will be senior night, and, I don't know. I'm guessing that Keegan will not participate in senior day festivities. I don't know if you guys had.
That's a good question. I doubt it.
But I think he'll get a rounding applause early when he comes out in the court.
Rightfully so.
Absolutely. And by the way, I've been kind of stalling here to finish the show because Iowa leading Indiana 95-95. Indiana has clawed their way back into the game. 95-91 with 8 seconds to go. It's a 24-point comeback. They were down 24 points, Indiana was. Iowa's never given up the lead. I mean, Indiana hasn't had the lead once in this game. 8 seconds, Iowa should be able to pull this out. Iowa at the free throw line, but playing with some fire against a really good Indiana team. So it looks like the Hawkeyes are going to escape there on the road, which it's not really an escape. It's a huge
first to 95 wins.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, Iowa, Michigan State, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Time, ESPN. No postgame show. Will be here throughout the week. And if you want to listen to this podcast, the recorded version of this show, I'll throw this up on the bottom line. Don't forget to follow From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and more. Gary, as always, it's been a pleasure to break it all down with you, and go Hawks on Tuesday.
You bet. Sounds good, Corey.
All right, for Coach Gary Close, I'm Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Everyone have a nice and safe Saturday and Sunday.